At Thanksgiving dinner, my father didn't lower his voice or soften the blow. He looked me straight in the eye in front of every relative at that table and said I was a useless failure. Then he pointed at the door and told me to go live in the streets. No whisper, no shame, just a clean public cut. My mother didn't blink. Crystal hid a smile in her napkin, and my chair suddenly felt a mile away from anyone who had ever claimed to love me. I didn't fight. I didn't cry. I smoothed my coat and walked out quiet, steady, carrying their judgment on my back, like a weight I'd finally stopped pretending wasn't there. They had no idea I earned $25 million a year. And the moment the cold air hit my face, something shifted. 3 weeks later, everything they thought they controlled collapsed in front of them. Before I tell you the rest, tell me, where are you listening from, so I know I'm not the only one who's lived this kind of betrayal. My name is Zoe Hartman, and if you saw my family from the outside, you'd swear we were picture perfect. Holiday cards with matching sweaters, smiles rehearsed, a dining room staged like something out of a magazine. But perfection makes a great disguise, and my parents wore it better than anyone I've ever met. Growing up, I learned early where I belonged, and more importantly, where I didn't. Crystal, my younger sister, was the sun in every room, the golden child, the chosen one. My parents spoke her name like an accomplishment, and mine like an inconvenience. She got violin lessons, summer programs, private tutoring. I got handed chores and a reminder to be grateful Crystal set such a good example. I didn't fit the Hartman mold. While Crystal posed for photos, I stayed up late teaching myself how to build websites, automate systems, and fix things people didn't even know were broken. At 16, when other girls posted prom dresses, I posted my first online project, and my family called it a quirky phase. When I left college to build something real, they said I embarrassed them. They never asked what I was creating. They only asked what people would think. By the time I turned 32, Crystal had become everything they wanted, polished, charming, loud enough to fill a room. I'd become everything they dismissed, quiet, independent, unwilling to shrink myself to fit their expectations. And the quieter I grew, the louder they rewrote my story for me. According to them, I wasn't building companies, I was messing around online. I wasn't successful, I was struggling. Thanksgiving wasn't new. It was just the first time they said the quiet part out loud. The humiliation, the whispers, the seating me at the end of the table like a distant relative. It had been happening my whole life. But that night, something cracked open inside me. Not because they insulted me. I'd survived worse. But because of how easily they believed their version of me over the truth. Back in Seattle, my penthouse felt like another planet. Floor-to-ceiling windows, calm, lighting everything I built with my own hands, yet their voices still echoed, scraping at old wounds I thought I'd sealed. And I kept asking myself the same question. How can people who know so little about your life feel so confident defining it? I didn't know it yet, but their cruelty at that table was only the beginning. The real unraveling started the moment I stopped trying to earn a place in a family that never wanted me whole. The days after Thanksgiving felt strangely hollow, like someone had lowered the volume on the world. I went through meetings, strategy calls, product reviews, everything I normally handled with sharp focus, but my mind kept drifting back to that table in Portland. The way my dad's voice echoed, the way my mother didn't even flinch, the way Crystal watched me like she was witnessing a scene she'd been waiting her whole life to see. But humiliation rarely ends in the moment it's delivered. It has an aftershock. Mine arrived 3 days later. I was standing in my kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil when my phone buzzed with a message from Lily, my cousin, the only person in that family who ever treated me like more than a shadow. Zoe, I need to tell you something. Your mom's been talking. My stomach tightened. Talking how a pause. Then she told everyone at church you're basically homeless in Seattle. Said your internet hobbies finally fell apart and you're staying on couches for now. I set the phone down the room, spinning for a second. Homeless, couch surfing, failed at life. They didn't just throw me out, they rewrote the story. And they did it with the same confidence they used when calling Crystal a genius for breathing. I texted I have a 3-bedroom penthouse. Lily replied, I know. They don't want to know? That line cut deeper than the lie itself. They didn't want to know. Knowing would force them to face the truth that everything they'd mocked, minimized, dismissed, had turned into success they couldn't control. 2 days later, the aftershock turned into a fault line. An email slid into my inbox from a law office in Portland. Subject confirmation required for your guarantor status. Guarantor. For what? I opened the message, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. It referenced a renovation loan around $400,000 taken out 2 years earlier, and according to the attached records, I was listed as the guarantor. I had never signed anything for them. I wouldn't have, but the file included a scan of my signature. One glance, and every nerve in my body went cold. They forged my name on a massive loan. A loan partially funneled into Crystal's boutique, the one she bragged about like it was her destiny. The humiliation at Thanksgiving suddenly made cruel sense. They needed me small, powerless, easier to use, easier to frame as unstable if the loan ever collapsed. I stood in the quiet of my kitchen, the city lights flickering against the glass, and let the truth settle like ice in my veins. They hadn't just thrown me out. They'd stolen from me. And the worst part, they genuinely believed they had the right. That night, something inside me finally stopped breaking and started sharpening. The first thing I felt wasn't anger, it was clarity. Cold, steady, almost frightening in how calm it settled into my chest. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to understand them. I wasn't trying to excuse them. I wasn't even trying to win them over. I was simply done. But being done didn't mean walking away. Being done meant drawing a line they could never step over again. I spent the next morning combing through every document the law firm had referenced. Payments, bills, records tied to the renovation and Crystal's boutique. Every trail led back to the same truth: huge sums had been moved without transparency, and the loan secured with my forged signature was slipping toward default. If it defaulted, the lender could seize assets, force a sell-off, or push for recovery, and if my name stayed on that paperwork, I'd be dragged with them. I forwarded everything to my attorney in Seattle. He called within minutes. "Zoe, this isn't sloppy. This is deliberate." "I know," I said. "Are you sure you're ready to pursue this?" "Once we open the door, it won't close quietly. That's the point." We began the process immediately, verifying handwriting inconsistencies, tracking the money flow, documenting every piece of financial misrepresentation. And the deeper we looked, the clearer one pattern became. My family had built their recent life upgrades on borrowed money. Not earned, not saved. Borrowed with my name as their safety net. That realization didn't hurt. What hurt was how naturally they must have believed I'd never fight back. 3 days into the review, the attorney called again. If the loan continues sliding, the lender may consider transferring control if a qualified buyer steps in to absorb the debt. "And I'm qualified," I said. "You're more than qualified. If you want the option to take over, I can initiate the process." I stared out at the Seattle skyline, the clouds rolling low over the water. Do it. That decision lit a fuse. Over the next 2 weeks, my team and I moved quietly. We positioned ourselves to legally acquire the loan if it defaulted, giving me leverage over the property and the financial choices tied to it. Nothing about it was vindictive. It was protection: my life, my reputation, my work. If they pulled me into a mess they created, I'd make sure I had control of how it unraveled. And still, throughout the process, not a single person from my family called. Not to apologize, not to explain, not even to lie. It was almost poetic how silent they were while I built the very outcome that would change everything for them. By the time the 3rd week hit, my attorney confirmed it. "The loan is entering default. You're first in line." I closed my laptop slowly, feeling that same cold clarity from the night they threw me out. 3 weeks ago, they told me to go live in the streets. Now, I was about to own the ground they stood on. 3 weeks later, my attorney's number flashed across my screen just as I stepped out of a late meeting. His voice carried the kind of finality that settles everything you already know. "It's official," he said. "Default triggered. You now control the debt. And effectively, everything tied to it. Everything. The house in Portland. The boutique Crystal bragged about like it was a crown. The leverage my family never imagined I'd hold." I didn't feel triumph. I felt steadiness like standing on solid ground for the first time. "Move forward," I told him. He didn't ask if I was sure. Not anymore. We spent 4 days preparing, drafting notices, outlining repayment terms, structuring the offer that would give my family 2 options. 1, sell and walk away clean. 2, enter a strict rental agreement under my ownership. No cruelty, no theatrics, just consequences. Fair, legal, human. What I didn't expect was the phone call from Portland. Not from my parents. From Mason. "Zoe," he said, voice low and urgent. "You need to know Crystal's panicking. Your parents think the lender is coming after them. They don't know it's you." A pause. "I don't think they'll handle it well." I almost laughed. Handle it well? They had forged my signature, humiliated me, slandered me, then expected the universe to protect them from the fallout they created. But I didn't want their panic. I wanted their understanding. Not of my success, but of the boundaries they'd broken. So I told Mason, "Meet me at Bellevue House. Friday. Dinner. Bring them." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. "They think the lender wants to negotiate." "Good," I said. Let them walk in believing that. Friday came cold and quiet, Seattle draped in mist that clung to the windows of the restaurant's private room. I arrived early, my attorney beside me. The table was set with candlelight and understated elegance, nothing flashy, nothing vengeful. Just a stage for truth. When the door opened, the first person I saw was my mother. Perfect hair, flawless makeup expression, tight with the strain of pretending everything was fine. My father walked behind her, jaw locked. Crystal trailed last eyes, red-rimmed but defiant. They didn't greet me. I didn't expect them to. "Zoe," my mother said carefully, taking her seat, "we appreciate you helping arrange this meeting with the lender. We're confident this is all a misunderstanding." My attorney exchanged a glance with me. "Mrs. Hartman," he said, settling his documents on the table, "there is no misunderstanding, and I'm not the lender's attorney." My father frowned. "Then why are you here?" "Because my attorney," answered, sliding the first folder forward. "Ms. Hartman is the acquiring party. She now controls the debt." Silence. A thick, suffocating silence. Crystal's breath hitched first. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face drained of color. I didn't savor it. I simply watched the truth land. My father recovered enough to point at the papers accusingly. You bought our loan. Why would you do that?" "Because I said softly." "You put my name on it." My mother shook her head rapidly. "We thought you'd understand Crystal needed help. Your father meant well. Forging my signature isn't meaning well. Calling me a failure at Thanksgiving isn't help. Telling people I'm homeless isn't concern." Crystal finally snapped. "Why couldn't you just let it go? You have money. You don't need this." I looked at her the way I might look at a stranger who wandered into the wrong story. "You're right. I don't need this. What I need is my name not tied to a sinking loan you all pretended didn't exist." My attorney slid the next document across the table. "These are the terms. You can sell the property and fully resolve the debt. Or if you choose not to sell, Ms. Hartman will assume ownership, and you may remain as tenants under a structured rental contract." "We have to rent our own home," my father whispered. "It isn't your home," I corrected. "Not anymore." Crystal glared at me with a mix of disbelief and fury. "You're ruining everything." "No," I said. "I'm ending what you started." My mother burst into quiet, broken sobs, not guilt, just fear of losing the life she curated for others to admire. "We're your family," she choked. "How can you do this to us?" I leaned forward, voice steady. "You taught me exactly how. The night you threw me out, you said I should go live in the streets. You said I was useless. You said I had nothing. But the truth is, you never knew me at all." I let that sit before continuing. "I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to separate myself from choices that were never mine." My father exhaled shakily, anger melting into something rawer. "What do you want from us?" Nothing, I said. Not an apology, not a confession. Just accountability. My attorney added, "You have 7 days to decide." The meeting ended with no hugs. No shouting, just stunned silence. They left the room looking smaller than I had ever seen them. Crystal paused at the doorway, eyes glossy. "You could have helped me," she whispered. "I did," I said. "Just not the way you wanted." When the door closed behind them, I let out a breath I'd held for years. Not from anger, from release. Outside, the mist had turned into a soft rain, tapping lightly against the pavement. I walked through it without rushing, feeling the weight of my family's expectations finally slip off my shoulders. 3 weeks earlier, they told me to go live in the streets. Tonight, they walked out of a building they no longer owned, and for the first time in my life, the distance between us felt like freedom. Over the next week, the silence from Portland was louder than any outburst could have been. No calls, no explanations, no sudden change of heart. My attorney forwarded updates as they came in short clinical messages, noting their hesitation, their consultations, their growing realization that there was no loophole big enough to crawl through. On the 7th day, just before the deadline, the decision arrived. They chose to sell. It was the smartest option, the cleanest exit. The sale cleared the debt in full, released my name from every tie, and left them with enough to downsize into a smaller place across town. No one was ruined. No one was left desperate. They simply had to live within the boundaries they had ignored for years. Crystal's boutique didn't survive the transition. Without the steady stream of borrowed money, it folded within a month. She posted a vague message online about new beginnings, never mentioning the truth. My parents retreated from the social circles they once dominated, their curated image quietly replaced by something humbler. And me, I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, whole. I went back to my work, my life in Seattle, the one I built without their validation. For the first time, my success wasn't something I carried in silence. It was simply my reality, unbothered by whether they acknowledged it. Sometimes protecting yourself isn't loud. Sometimes it's choosing peace so decisively that nothing chaotic can follow you home again. I haven't spoken to them since that dinner, and maybe that's the clearest sign of healing silence that doesn't ache anymore. I built a life that isn't shaped by their expectations, their judgments, or their rewritten stories. A life where my worth isn't up for debate. If any part of this felt familiar, you're not alone. And if you've ever had to walk away to save yourself, I hope my story reminds you it's allowed. Share your thoughts, subscribe, and stay for the next story.